Gonzalez to the show. We'll discuss his advocacy for Harris County deputies getting proper compensation after the mayor's pay raise for Houston police. I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We'll also weigh in on the top stories of the day, such as former President Joe Biden's prostate cancer diagnosis.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. We'll also discuss the case of a pregnant woman in Georgia who's been on life support for 3 months, even after being declared brain dead due to the state's strict anti-abortion laws.
And as Ernie, Frank, and I discuss the top headlines of the day, we want your thoughts, your questions, and concerns. Give us a call or shoot us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Former President Joe Biden is thanking people today for their support, writing on X, "Cancer touches us all." NPR's Tamara Keith reports on Biden's disclosure over the weekend that he has an aggressive form of prostate cancer.
Yeah, according to a statement from Biden's personal office, the cancer was detected after he experienced increasing urinary symptoms, and it has metastasized to his bones and is a more aggressive form of prostate cancer. The statement says it appears to be hormone sensitive, which means there are options for effective management, and the former president and his family are reviewing treatment options with his physicians.
NPR's Tamara Keith. Biden, who is now 82, ended his re-election bid last year after he was unable to quell concerns, including among his own allies, about his advanced age and health. He has continued to push back and did so during public appearances recently ahead of a new book by 2 journalists who chronicle the role Biden's White House advisors played in how they publicly disclose information about his health. The Prime Minister of Israel is allowing some aid into Gaza after nearly 3-month blockade. Israel has launched an extensive ground offensive in Gaza in an effort to force Hamas to surrender and release Israeli hostages. NPR's Carrie Kahn reports from Tel Aviv.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will allow a, quote, basic quantity of food into Gaza and control all aid distribution there. He also said Israel will hold on to territory seized by ground forces in what he says will be a plan to, quote, taking control of all of Gaza. Intense shelling and airstrikes in northern Gaza has forced Palestinians to flee, like 50-year-old Wael al-Kilani, who walked for hours with his wife and 7 children. He says the bombing was intense, with planes striking, artillery fire, and tanks. Hamas and Israel are currently holding indirect talks in Doha. Israel demands Hamas lay down its arms. Hamas wants international guarantees for a negotiated end to the war. Carrie Kahn, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
The yield on Treasury bonds rising after Moody's stripped the federal government of its AAA bond rating. Here's NPR's Scott Horsley.
Moody's was the last of the big 3 credit rating agencies to lower its estimate of the U.S. government's creditworthiness. The company warned that U.S. policymakers have failed to address a rising tide of government debt. The move comes as congressional Republicans are weighing an extension of the 2017 tax cut, which is expected to add trillions of dollars in additional red ink over the next decade. That additional borrowing is only partially offset by GOP spending cuts. Stock in Walmart opened lower after President Trump took to social media to say the retail giant should eat the cost of his new tariffs rather than raising prices. Walmart warned last week that some price increases are inevitable, given the magnitude of the president's import taxes. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
It's NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. Police arrested just under 300 people this weekend on Boulevard Peninsula after an enhanced security presence this year for Jeep Weekend. That's a slight decrease compared to last year. Overall, 278 misdemeanor and 52 felony charges were filed. Authorities also recovered 42 firearms. One family who owns a beach house in Boulevard is speaking out against the police crackdown. Kevin Moss says police crossed the line by imposing strict rules that kept families from accessing the beach.
My issue is these are not these are not those police officers' beaches. These are those citizens' beaches, and those police officers have a duty to let those people use those beaches, and they just totally missed what their purpose was.
Moss says he questions the scope of the law enforcement crackdown over the weekend and whether they have the right to block public access to the beach. A brief power outage struck the FAA control tower at Houston's Hobby Airport Sunday afternoon. News 88.7's Tom Perumian was at the airport.
According to a spokesperson for the Houston airport system, the power went out at the FAA facility around 1:15 p.m. A backup generator kicked in and everything was back to normal within an hour. The airport system responded with a statement saying, quote, "There were no major operational impacts and flights continued through this period. There has been no word on the cause of the power failure." Meanwhile, broadcast reports stated FAA officials warned others to expect delays for flights that were landing at Hobby. Planes already airborne reportedly had to remain in the air for up to 30 minutes. Reporting from Hobby Airport, I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
The Houston Astros beat the Texas Rangers 4-3 yesterday. Houston currently remains 2.5 games behind the Mariners for the first place in their division. It's 83 degrees, mostly sunny. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
I was saying to Tom in a break a little earlier today that I woke up feeling like this is going to be a great week. Did anybody else have that feeling?
That's fantastic. Well, you know,
It's going to be a short week.
I don't even feel it is going to be a short week.
Of you.
I don't even really feel like I had a weekend. We were so busy this weekend that we just went.
What'd you do?
Well, iFest on Saturday.
Oh, UMC.
Yes.
How was it?
It was fabulous.
Nice.
It was absolutely amazing. I didn't realize this, but about 3 or 4 years ago, my family and I just happened to walk into iFest and watch it, and now I was
4 years
MC
later,
and
you're hosting it. It's like a Broadway success story.
It is. No, it really is fabulous. It's a wonderful event. I'm excited for next year's iFest. But yeah.
What does I stand for? Do you know?
International.
Oh, so it's do they celebrate a particular country this
Culture.
year?
So this year the highlighted country was Australia.
Australia.
Australia,
You lived in
and I used to
Australia.
live there, and so it was
Perfect
fantastic.
match.
It was
Australia
perfect.
was not disqualified.
I
They
was
didn't
waiting.
make it through the semifinals in Eurovision, so we didn't get to see them on Saturday, but we had our big party.
Yes.
Over 100
I'm
people
so
came
sorry I
up.
missed
Our
it.
caller, if you were listening last week on Friday, Gary had called up. He had played for one of the...
Oh, yeah.
He showed up at the party.
You invited
So it was
him. I
cool.
remember you
That
invited
is
him.
really cool.
It was a
Ernie.
great time. And then
That's awesome.
this is going to lead into, I want to know what you did this weekend, but I got home Saturday night and thought, it's kind of warm in my place. My AC was broken.
Oh, no.
So overnight Saturday night, we had no AC, but it
sorry.
stayed cool in the house for the most part. So we were very lucky, but we had to get that fixed. But that leads, and I don't mean to jump on what you did this weekend, but the weather was warm.
I know. And the heat index is tomorrow expected to be 109.
Oh,
I know.
Well, we did get the AC fixed on Sunday.
Well, National Weather Service has issued this on a scale of 0, meaning nothing, no problem, but it's 0 to 4. We're a 3, a major heat risk with what's going on. And that'll probably continue all week. So unless you get a quick, brief shower, it's going to be hot. So make sure that you take care of yourself.
Advice to folks. What would you say?
Light clothing, stay in the shade if you can. If you have to be outdoors, make sure you stay hydrated, and hydrated. That really is the key to it. Make sure the water keeps coming in.
Sunblock.
If you don't
forget
have
sunblock.
AC, do you open your windows?
I would
You
open
keep
my
it-
windows.
keep it in-
Fans have a way of just blowing hot air around,
Right.
and don't really do that much good. But I think you can always. I would call 311 and ask either if a cooling center is open or if they have some kind of an air conditioner that you could have or borrow.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times those air conditioners that you put water in,
Oh yeah.
yeah, they're not terribly expensive, but you know, they might have some of those. So be careful. Other than that, I watched Eurovision.
Oh, did you?
I did.
You
And what'd you
did.
think?
What'd you think?
I thought it was interesting. I
You
thought the
didn't
winner
like it.
was. I thought the winner. He's a counter tenor.
Yes.
He sings alto, and then he goes way up high with falsetto. I was like, this guy's not very good, but he won. And I waited an hour to find out because they do all the countries have to vote. That takes 30 minutes. All the
Yep.
people have to vote. That takes 30 minutes. I'm like, I waited an hour and 6 minutes to find this guy.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
he was saying wasted love. I think wasted time. If I had lived in a high rise, I'd have jumped out of it.
The fun part is the voting when you don't know. Everyone thought Sweden was going to take it, and so
But
it was
Israel
kind of
came in
surprising.
second.
Israel came in second,
Yeah.
and
See, I did watch.
as always, it ends with challenges now for how the voting went in. So for the next few months, they're going to be exploring the vote, and it always ends up staying the same. and
Well,
then
he
they go
won
into the
pretty
next year.
handily.
Yeah.
I mean, when he got the last counted votes. Anyway,
I
thank you
promised
for
people.
introducing me to that.
I promised people we would stop talking about Eurovision until next year now, but maybe just a little bit more, but we're pretty much done. Anyway, I do want to mention that Sheriff Ed Gonzalez is going to be joining us in just a little bit. So if you've got questions for the Harris County Sheriff, give us a call starting now. It's 713-440-8870. Remember, we're on YouTube. You can see us all talk. I like Celeste's outfit. She was talking about she wasn't sure today if that she was, I think it's adorable. Anyway,
I
that has
appreciate
nothing
that,
to do with
Ernie.
anything. Now on to the topics
Oh,
of the
just
day.
but before we move on, my British guy, computer guy, says the sauna song should have won.
Thank you. That's Sweden's song, Bara Bara Basta. Thank you.
That is.
Why
Ernie's
didn't they
favorite song.
win?
It's a popular vote. It wasn't a we'll talk
Why
about
did
that.
that
We'll talk
guy-
more
why did
about
that
it.
guy
Do a
win?
real show.
Why did that guy win? I don't get it. I don't get it.
So let's take us away.
Former President Joe Biden has been diagnosed with prostate cancer that has spread to his bones, according to a statement from his personal office. Biden, who is 82 years old, underwent additional tests last week after a prostate nodule was discovered. The cancer has a Gleason score of 9, indicating a more aggressive form of the disease. As Ernie mentioned, UT Health prostate cancer surgeon Dr. Stephen Canfield will be joining us in a bit. Former President Joe Biden this morning thanked well-wishers for their support after his personal office announced he has cancer. He wrote in a post on X, "Cancer touches us all. Like so many of you, Jill and I have learned that we are strongest in the broken places. Thank you for lifting us up with love and support." Back in February of 2023, while the now 82-year-old former president was serving in the White House, Biden had a lesion removed from his chest that was cancerous, according to the former White House physician. You can join the conversation. What are your thoughts and comments on this news on former President Joe Biden? 713-440-8870.
And I know, Frank, you've had a history with this, and you talk openly about it. I just am concerned not so much about the prostate cancer, which a lot of people are touched by, and it has a very good success rate. It's the moving to the bone.
Well, that and the Gleason score. The highest Gleason score you can get is a 10.
Explain Gleason scores.
Well,
to
they
us a
go
little
in
bit.
and do a biopsy, and apparently they first found a nodule on his prostate. That's an indication. That's a bump, just like a breast bump or breast cancer or any kind of growth, So they find the bump, and then they go in and they do a biopsy in 12 regions of the prostate. And they'll take 12 to 16 samples of tissue. They'll look at that and then basically score the tissue. And they score it on a scale of 0 to 5, and they score it twice. And so if it's a 6, you get a score of a 1 and a 3, or you've got a 4, right? If you get a 3 and a 3, it's on a scale of 1 to 5. You get a 3 and a 3, you have a 6. That's watchful waiting. That's where you keep watching to see if it goes to a 7, 8, 9, or 10. 7 is obviously least aggressive. It's what I had. Then as you get to an 8, that's like, okay, we've got to do something fairly soon about this. You get to a 9 or a 10, it's like, let's make an appointment to have your prostate removed or put you in radiation, depending on whether the cancer has spread outside the prostate. In President Biden's case, it is clearly spread to the bones.
So they're
and like you said, that's very
Yeah.
concerning because there's treatments you can do, but you can't cure it.
Right.
So you can only watch it and do the best you can to keep it under control so that it doesn't spread to your lungs or spread to your brain. And by the way,
bones,
Dr.
then it
Stephen
moves.
Canfield that we are going to be talking to was my doctor, my urologist, who invited me to be a part of the gold nanoparticle treatment that we did. And, thanks to him, I'm still vertical.
Yes, and
Well,
he's... Yeah.
Joining us now, Dr. Stephen Canfield, a prostate cancer surgeon at UT Health. Dr. Canfield, thank you for joining us on Hello Houston.
It's nice to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Well, it's nice to see you again, Dr. Canfield. It's Frank Billingsley here.
Hi, Frank.
I don't know if you heard me explaining the Gleason score properly. I think I did.
I did. I thought, you guys don't need me. You have an expert right there.
But a 9 and already metastasizing to the bone is pretty serious when it comes to prostate cancer.
Right. As you said, it's a score system that goes from 6 to 10. So 10 is the highest. He has a 9 apparently. That's really high.
And the metastasizing to the bones. There's not much you can do other than try to treat it. And how would you treat it?
Mm-hmm.
You're right. Fortunately, most prostate cancer is diagnosed before it spreads, so that's good news for most men, but it's not uncommon to present where it has already spread, like in this case. And once prostate cancer, like many cancers, has spread outside of the target origin or organ of origin, it is pretty hard to cure. And in prostate cancer, we can't cure prostate cancer that has spread. So treatments are designed to control the disease. The good news is that treatments can do a great job at controlling the disease for a long time, years and years.
Oh, that's good. So there's hope there.
Now, if it's in the bones, is this going to be painful at all for the president? Does the cancer, when it's gone from the prostate to the bones, obviously it becomes more complex, but explain to us the complexity of now that it is spread.
You're right, it can be painful. That's often a question we ask patients who are presenting with a high blood test that indicates sometimes men might have prostate cancer. Do you have any aches or pains in your hips or your back, any of your long bones, places that we kind of expect prostate cancer to spread to? And so that can sometimes manifest. It may be the kind of thing a man says, well, I've had this ache. I didn't think much of it. It turns out it might be where the prostate cancer is. So it can be painful. Not always. Sometimes it can be spread to the bones and you don't feel it at all.
You were talking a moment ago about oftentimes we find prostate cancer early and it's taken care of and it's got a high success rate. He was president. I understand they get regular checkups, all of this. This seems to have been found very quickly, announced very quickly, and to have spread very quickly. Could it be a case of it wasn't identified early enough where it should have been, or are there opportunities where it just springs up as prostate cancer and spreads very quickly?
It's a great question. I've thought about that a lot in the last 24 hours. It is a little surprising, but if you look at screening guidelines and the way prostate cancer typically behaves, if you get to a certain age, it's very unlikely that whether you get prostate cancer after that or not will matter. It won't affect your life typically. And so after 70 or 75, depending on which guideline you read, it's not recommended to be looking for prostate cancer anymore. So it's entirely possible and normal that the president wouldn't have been screened anymore. And in that case, in the last couple of years, something might have come up surprisingly. So that may be why this happened.
To that point, Dr. Canfield, I've often heard that if a man lives long enough, he'll die with prostate cancer, but not from it.
That's true sometimes, right? And we struggle with that all the time. Who needs to be screened? Who should we go looking for? So somebody who's got 20 or more years to live, we certainly want to screen them and see if they have aggressive prostate cancer that could be a problem for them over time. But as we get older, it doesn't matter as much. Even if you are diagnosed with prostate cancer at a certain age, we don't live forever. And prostate cancer is an extremely slow-growing disease most of the time.
Seeing this as such a public case, do you think this will lead to more people at least requesting prostate screening later in life as opposed to, and I heard the similar thing to what you just said, that when you get to 70 or so, they stop recommending it but seeing that, yes, if it's caught, it may not have moved to the bone. So should we be considering going later with these screenings?
I don't want to go against screening policies, and there are international guidelines that talk about this, but in the end, age is just a number, and what matters is the life expectancy. And so if you're a healthy person and you are going to be around for more than 10 years, you might want to find out what's going on. We spend a lot of time thinking that survival is the only important outcome with cancer, when in fact, metastatic disease causes pain. You have to be on long-term, lifelong hormone treatments, chemotherapies. So these things cost in terms of financially, as well as toxicity to your body, side effects. And a lot of that can be avoided if cancer is caught early.
Saying all of that, Dr. Canfield, and this is just a personal opinion, does it surprise you that the President of the United States, no matter how old he or she is, but especially he, doesn't get a routine PSA every year?
It surprised me a little bit. We don't normally screen people in their 80s, but he was the president, so I really don't know what his physical regimen would be like. It's not routine to check for PSA in that age group, so that would have been a normal thing not to check. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
Can we
not
go
going to be able to speculate on that.
Yeah. While we're on the subject, though, can we go to the earliest? Because more and more, especially in the African American community, ages for checking your PSA have dropped to 40 years old. So what do you recommend to men, especially African American men, and men who may have a father, an uncle, a brother who's been diagnosed as well? What age would you send?
You know a lot about prostate cancer, Frank. You're right. There are certain populations that we consider at higher risk, and meaning that the chance of finding prostate cancer in them is 2 to 3 to even greater fold than the regular population, where it's already very common, as you know. And so typically we recommend starting the screening process at age 50, but if you have a higher risk group, such as a family history or your African American race, then most guidelines recommend starting screening in your 40s.
And I would say if you're adopted and don't really know your biological origins, then I would certainly start in my 40s. Mm-hmm.
Do you know anybody like that?
I did. I started in my 40s.
You're listening to Hello Houston, and we are speaking with Dr. Stephen Canfield, a prostate cancer surgeon at UT Health Houston, regarding former President Biden's cancer diagnosis. You can join the conversation at 713-440-8870.
Doctor, we're talking about the spreading from prostate cancer to bone cancer. There was talk about the spot that was removed from his chest earlier. I am curious, if it's gone to bone cancer, does that automatically mean it's in the marrow? And then what does that mean for cancer once it gets into the bone marrow?
Cancers are fascinating in that they spread to very specific places in our bodies depending on where they come from. And biochemists, molecular biologists talk about this idea of the seed and the soil, the seed being the cancer and the soil, where it grows really well. So for some reason that we have not figured out yet, in prostate cancer, it spreads to lymph node tissues around the prostate and bones. And when it lands in the bones, it's in the actively producing bone turning over areas and has a very distinctive appearance. It's not in the marrow. So there are treatments that target those areas depending on how many bone sites there are. Sometimes people are offered radiation to try to stop the cancer in those areas. There's really new, fascinating new treatments now known as theranostics. We have advanced diagnostic imaging using special PET scans and tagged labels where the tracer can find all the areas of cancer and light up on the PET scan. You can add a radioactive element to that as well. And so in addition to finding the area, it's now depositing very specific radioactivity to that area to kill the cancer. So there are great new treatments, in fact, not only for early cancer, like the trial that Frank participated in, but also for advanced metastatic cancers now.
Last thing from me here is, what should be the takeaway for people listening today? It's a great opportunity to remind people this is out there. What should individuals do?
Especially if you are African American or know you have a family history, you should check your PSA. Even if not, just like routine screenings like colonoscopies, you should ask your doctor to check your PSA. There are many primary care doctors who are still of the opinion that that's not needed. There was some controversy about it many years ago. We've come a long way. We don't find cancers that don't need to be found as often anymore in prostate. We don't overtreat men who don't need any treatments. We talked about surveillance. And so things have changed and the old controversies aren't real anymore. So if your doctor's not offering you screening, you should ask for it. That's the biggest takeaway I could mention.
And saying that, it's pretty obvious to you and me, but it's a simple blood test. And you could get a PSA done when you're getting all the other stuff done, and just ask for it.
And Dr. Canfield, given the president's age and his diagnosis, what would you recommend for the next steps and protocol?
I don't know any of the specifics about his case. I don't know how extensive the spread to the bones is, for example. But in general, when somebody presents with new metastatic prostate cancer, there are a number of different options that are all focused on the so-called androgen axis, shutting down testosterone, which is the driving growth factor for prostate cancer and has been a mainstay of treatment for almost 100 years now. We have very new ways to target that axis, new medications that are much more powerful than before. So I assume that his doctors are talking to him about all of those options and adding a number of different hormone targeting therapies.
Wow. Dr. Stephen Canfield is a prostate cancer surgeon at UT Health Houston. Thank you for joining us on Hello Houston.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up on Hello Houston, Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez will join us and take your comments and questions at 713-440-8870. And we will continue to take your calls on today's topics at 713-440-8870. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines with programming devoted to telling stories that humanize complex issues. PBS World on TV 8.6 and online at houstonpublicmedia.org.
Elevate your impact with Houston Public Media. Today is New Member Monday. Now is the perfect moment to make a difference by becoming a new member. Your first donation supports trusted news, educational documentaries, and enriching arts on air. Join us in our mission to inform, educate, and inspire Houston. Visit houstonpublicmedia.org/donate and make your first contribution today. Together, let's shape a future filled with quality programming and community engagement. Thank you for being a vital part of Houston Public Media.
Support comes from Signify Business Cash by Wells Fargo. With this business credit card, cardholders can earn rewards on business purchases with no caps or categories to track. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/signify. Terms apply. Support for Houston Public Media comes from St. Arnold Brewing Company, a place for corporate events on tap, meeting rooms, AV equipment, and full catering available. More at starnold.com.
Support comes from Rice University's Baker Institute, offering a forum for informed, nonpartisan, civic-minded engagement on the most pressing issues facing Texas, the U.S., and the world. More information about becoming a member is at bakerinstitute.org/membership.
Support comes from the Houston Symphony, performing Schumann's Second Symphony under music director Yuri Valchua. Plus, pianist Bruce Liu performs Chopin's First Piano Concerto, May 23rd through 25th at Jones Hall. Tickets at houstonsymphony.org. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Central Market, celebrating grilling season with oysters, Gulf shrimp, handmade sausages and burgers, potato salads, and more. Details at centralmarket.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Earlier this month, Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez called on county officials to increase the wages for county officers after the city of Houston announced a new police contract that would see increased wages of over 30% over the next 5 years. During a press conference on May 9th announcing his proposed wage increase for county officials, Sheriff Gonzalez stated, quote, "The cost of hiring and retaining quality peace officers is escalating quickly, and Harris County must act immediately and with urgency to ensure that our sheriff's office and our constables' officers have the deputies we need to patrol our communities, prevent crimes, and arrest violent offenders." So, who could have said that better than I did? The sheriff himself, and he's here with us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Hello to all of you. Great to be with you.
It must be difficult when you are so close in proximity with the city of Houston and the county for one to get an increase and the other not to. Fiscally, though, is it a responsible move?
I do believe it's responsible, and yes, it's difficult. And I think that historically, the Harris County Sheriff's Office has been woefully behind other law enforcement agencies, and and this isn't just a new phenomenon now. We're talking since the beginning of time when the Sheriff's Office was in place until now. And so I think now the market just continues to move and leave us further and further behind. So this is a real important public safety issue for our community. And so I think we need to all act with a sense of urgency. Everyone wants public safety. I feel it's the number one responsibility of any government, and so I do think it's a responsible thing to do as well.
When you say woefully behind, I mean, deputies were at 57,000, police officers in Houston were at 64. They're about to go to 81. I mean, that's a huge difference, 81,000 for a police officer and a deputy's at 57. And you compare it to Austin and Dallas. Austin's at 70,000, Dallas is at 68. So I don't think you've been pinned down on what kind of a raise you think is deserved, but what are you shooting for?
I would like to see for us to be competitive, to have parity as close as we can get. Look, I'm practical. I understand that there's a lot of other important issues that a growing county needs to address. But if other entities and government agencies have been able to get it done, I think we need to make sure that we're doing everything possible to do right by our frontline deputies, both deputies and constables as well, that play such an important role. And I don't know of any other agency that asks as much as our deputies, if you will, because we have the petrochemical complex. We have so many other, our threat matrix here in Greater Harris County is very large when you talk about all those threats, whether it be industrial incidents, severe weather events, so many other things.
Well, and so I know you have authority pretty much over all of Houston and Harris County,
correct.
Whereas the police are just for Houston. So you guys have to cover it all in addition to what the police cover.
Yes, and we work very well with all our partners, and I'm so happy for them and those around the state that are doing well. I think it speaks well that in our profession that salaries are going up. I think that's a positive thing. We want our first responders to be well paid. And so that's what we're trying to do is just make sure that we're staying competitive. If not, it could be a real challenge. And to your point, Frank, about the footprint that we cover, we have a lot of significant events coming our way, from the World Baseball Classic to World Cup to so many other events. And we're a key partner to all of that to make sure that we're also supplementing resources. Just this weekend, we're down in Galveston as well, supporting a large-scale event that they had. So at some point, if we're going to be, stay relevant and be able to serve our daily threats that occur in our community every day, but then also to be able to respond to anything that may come our way, we want to make sure that we have adequate staffing, and that means retaining the quality people and experienced people that we have. When somebody picks up the phone, they want an experienced first responder to show up, and that's what we want to be able to deliver, and that we're also able to attract the future folks that are going to serve in our agency and constables' offices as well.
And I guess problematically is if you're so close with the city right here that you could lose officers over to them because the pay is better, which understandably. So you need to be on the same playing field. And we often hear from the police force about how hard it is to get recruits in. People are going to go somewhere where they can get better paid if they have a choice.
That's a great point, Ernie, and absolutely. And I remember when I first started my career many years ago, you signed up to serve an agency and you stayed for the duration. It's no longer the case. Right. I think now, and I can't blame them, and first of all, it's tougher to attract into this profession for a number of reasons. That would be a show in itself. But I think now it's much more mobile workforce where, hey, they're paying a little bit more down the road and I don't have the same stress level. It's smaller or more niche, and I'm going to go work over there. Or, my wife got a job somewhere else, so I'm going somewhere else and get a job with another agency. And, you're certified around the state. It carries the same certification. So those are some of the challenges. So not only locally, and again, we applaud our partners. I'm glad to see that they're advancing with their pay, and our firefighters as well. We just want to be part of it as well, not fall further behind, because every raise, it just puts us further and further behind, and the impacts at some point are not going to be very good for this region. We want a safe region when they come here, and we need everyone to be operating at full strength.
Well, Sheriff Gonzalez, how do you feel safety is right now currently in Harris County?
I feel that we're definitely doing much better than some of the upticks we saw a few years ago. We see things overall moving in a positive direction. There's always things that we can all be doing to be much better. Obviously, your chronic offenders that are out there harming the community are something that for us, is a huge priority. We see a lot of different elements to crime continuing to evolve, like bank juggings, for example. It's something that we're seeing an uptick in our community. Domestic violence, many of our homicides have an intimate partner violence nexus to it. So we're seeing those challenges, and those are very difficult to work. But I feel that things are moving in the right direction for sure, and I hope that we're able to continue to do that. We're seeing obviously also threats with teen violence has been on the uptick, and it's very scary. I think there's about 80 or 90 teenagers right now that are being held in the juvenile system for murder or capital murder. Just think about that for a moment. 80 or 90, those are teenagers accused of a murder or capital murder.
I want to go back for a minute before we get into broader subjects, back to the pay situation here, and the nuts and bolts being there is a budget. We've got to find the money somewhere. Your thoughts on where maybe in the county budget that it does have room for growth for your pay, or is there outside ways that things could be increased to help that, so that we're not saying, which everyone freaks out when you say taxes, but how do you support them the raise of this? Not to say it's not important. I'm just curious how the mechanics work.
Again, I know that there's two parts to it. One is to say, do we in concept support that there should be increased, more competitive wages? I think everybody would say yes to that.
Right.
I think the issue becomes then how do you pay for it? And so I think the timing is good right now to have those discussions. I believe that the county leaders understand the urgency of this. And I do want to say that over time we have received some raises. However, we've never quite closed the gap, and it only continues to grow. And so I think right now is good timing because the county is entering its budget planning process right now. Our budget cycle is different than the city's. So with that said, we're able to look at the budget holistically and really look at those things that are truly essential, and then look at things that may not be essential, and then also look at maybe projects or programs that were perhaps funded through ARPA that money has elapsed, and we'll, to see if we could pivot from some of that, if we could redirect some of the money with some of the positive efforts that we're starting to realize in jail population. We're starting to see more trials happening. A DA Tier, District Attorney Tier has done a good job, him and his team, of getting more trials going and expediting that process. So we're really starting to realize some positive outcomes on the jail population side. So we'll be able to hopefully start bringing back some of those high-cost outsourcing costs that we were having to put. So it's a combination of things, and maybe some of those monies on non-essential programs. And look, some of these things are hard. It brings tough decisions, but it's something we're not strangers to in our own households when we have to budget.
So people understand. Give them a picture of, if you can, if we start to lose officers, if we start to shrink this support, this security, what does the county look like? What do we face if we're not paying attention to this situation?
Yeah, not to be over dramatic, but really, I think we really find ourselves in a less safer climate. We have a lot of different threats that are out there, serious crimes, and it's really up to our first responders every day that suit up and do the tough work. They have to run into danger. And I know because we expect a lot out of them, whether it be an active attack situation, whether it be we're coming up on hurricane season. They don't get to go home and protect their own homes. They have to be out serving. I've seen them in action. And so if you start having brain drain, if you will, whether they go to nearby agencies, great for them, but they don't necessarily cover the areas that we do, just geographically. Right. And so we need to make sure that constables and deputies are still able to respond to those unincorporated areas and do it at a high level so that we can make sure that we're keeping violent crime at bay as best we can, and that we're prepared for any type of situation. We cover in totality over 1,700 square miles. Wow. And folks also forget that our unincorporated areas are very urban now. It's not like some other areas where they may have an unincorporated area, but it's not very populated. Ours has the equivalent of the same amount of people that incorporated city of Houston does. So it's a huge challenge. So if somebody calls, we want to be able to respond in a timely manner and be able to take care of business. And we want to continue to deliver at a high level for our community.
You're listening to Hello Houston. We are speaking with Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, and now is the time to call and ask your questions for Sheriff Gonzalez. You can give us a call at 713-440-8870.
We have a YouTube comment, and I want to get to that, but I have one more question about the salary thing. How do you keep people from playing the game where, well, I'm going to go to HPD because they're paying me more, and then, oh, wait, I'm going to go back over to Harris County because now they're paying me more. Now, is there a pension incentive, or what would keep an officer there if the pay is fair?
Yeah, I would think that most would say that there are great benefits to our overall benefit package. Right. I think the county's done a great job over the years of having a really strong benefits package, but the issue is that many times somebody that's entering this profession these days isn't necessarily looking at 20, 30 years down the road.
I know.
Where it used to be. So a lot of it's going to be, what are you offering now? And the other thing I would say is, look, it's not only pay. I don't know if anybody necessarily gets into this profession or being a first responder to become independently wealthy per se, but what we want is to make it competitive. And I think if it's competitive, you do reduce some of it because, you establish a good working family, you like certain aspects of the job and it just becomes home for you. But when there's the disparity is so big financially, then it's hard to justify somebody staying if they could make a lot more just going down the street, wherever down the street.
Sure, that's where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly. Ultimately, yes.
This YouTube comment that I spoke about, this is from Alex Garza. He addresses it to HPD, but I think it's for you, obviously. It says, Houston remains a major hub for human trafficking, and I'm concerned about that ongoing issue. What are you doing to crack down on that?
We're doing quite a bit of things. One of the things that we're doing is we continue to we've expanded now even our jail intelligence operations. We operate the second largest jail system in the country, so we've been able to do a lot of jail intelligence inside. You may have seen some of the arrests that stemmed from jail-based investigations. That wasn't heard of years ago, so we've added that new element. We also work on different task forces at our multi-agency as well, and then we do our own investigative operations as well. We are a hub city. It's a very challenging issue because it's so often underreported, and obviously if somebody's under bondage, whether it be labor side or on the sex trafficking side or even involving children, they obviously operate in the shadows, but we do our very best. We even do roundups several times a year so we could go and find runaways, because we know that nowadays with these Romeo offenders that try to seduce these young teens, over time, that they're at high risk of falling into trafficking. So we do a multi-prong approach. We also work a lot with those women that may find themselves incarcerated. We're doing a lot more programming on that. Our experience has been, we know nationally that women in jails and prisons are the fastest growing population. And we understand that many times when it comes to women, there's a lot of unpacked trauma over the years of sexual abuse, other forms of abuse. And so the more we could address that, try to get them on track and support them the best way we can and focus more on the offenders and support the victims, I think has been a good model for us. And I think we're seeing some very positive aspects here. One of the things is that here there's so much more awareness about it. And so you hear about a lot more of the issue here than maybe in other jurisdictions.
And Sheriff Gonzalez, you mentioned and you touched on the jail, and it's been understaffed for a long time. You mentioned the outsourcing of inmates to other jails. You've also said that that's going to be one of the most expensive things that the county will pay for this year at $54 million. Commissioner Tom Ramsey came out and said that he wants some reassurance that these issues of the jail outsourcing will be cleared up before they can support increasing deputy wages. So what are your thoughts on that, and how do you explain that when you're looking for higher pay for your deputies?
Yeah, one thing, I think it's important to understand the context of it. One thing that I've said before is that we don't have necessarily a jail staffing issue. What we have is a jail population issue. And there's a distinction there, is that when you're bursting at the seams, which we were for such a long time, it just simply isn't sustainable over the course of time. When you look at average length of stay, the backlogs that were caused by Harvey and then COVID and then just other factors, trials not moving fast enough, all these factors really create a choke point, if you will, in the system, and you're still bringing folks in every single day. And so we're starting to see some more efficiencies and effectiveness in the broader criminal justice system. We're but one cog, only we're the most high-profile piece because that's the most visible one. But every step along the way has to be effective in moving cases along in a timely manner for everyone, as much for the victims as you do for those that are accused of crimes. And so I think it's hard sometimes to unpack to say, on one day we're going to turn the light out on this and bring everybody back, and and then the next day we're going to do this. I think it's a matter of working in tandem, strategic, being smart about it. We're already starting effectively to start a plan to start bringing more people back than what we're sending. And so I think, and I mentioned earlier, we're starting to see a positive traction when it comes to our jail population, where it's decreasing at a faster clip than it was before. Not because anybody's letting people out, just the disposition of cases. Let's hold people accountable. Let's send them to the state prison. Why just leave them stuck here? County jails were never designed to be long-term stays. They weren't. And when I go nationally, I speak to colleagues, they are just flabbergasted to hear what our average length of stay is compared to what it is in the rest of the state of Texas and the rest of the nation for a county jail system.
What is the average stay?
Right now, it's at about 180. And that's average, right? You have some that are there for murder that may be there longer and some shorter. I'm just saying average. Around the state of Texas, around 60 days for a county jail system. So we're about 3 times more. In some cities, it's like at 30. So they're like, wow, 200 days? Well, it puts a big burden on the system with a lot of folks that don't want to be there. Their cases are stuck. 70% of 12% of our population right now are homeless individuals. We're not a homeless shelter. I'm sorry. We're a jail system. We need to be dealing with not social ills every day, but that's the, mental health. We're the largest mental health hospital.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you, now that you've touched on mental health, Sheriff Gonzalez, I understand that looking within your department, March was a very hard month for you all. Y'all were hit by one who was current, and then 3 former employees all died by suicide. What type of mental health support is being offered to your deputies within your department?
Yeah, that was a very tough stretch for myself at a personal level, knowing several of them. And then, so my condolences go out to the families as well as everybody that's had to grapple with this. And suicide is such a tough thing here in our community. We see it on a regular basis, sometimes children as young as 10 years old. And I am very happy and proud of some of the services that we've provided years ago when I first launched our behavioral health division. It's an entire division at the hands of Dr. McNeese that has a team of dedicated professionals that work with our first responders to give them the support that they need. It's one of those professions where you see a high incidence of suicide, high incidence of divorce, alcoholism, and other factors. It's a very, again, back to the pay issue. It's like it's a hazardous, profession, and so it was a very tough month for us. Our team has all rallied together to move forward and honor those that, we lost along the way, and continue to find ways to support. We understand the impacts of PTSD, as those are traumatic things that they see every day, and try to end the stigma around getting support around mental health issues. Not only, I have a long history of doing that for the community, but also in our own agency. We have a peer support team that we've grown to make sure that peers can offer support to their peers, because sometimes they may be able to relate better to a peer in real time rather than going somewhere. And so we've tried to add a lot of support services, and we're still trying to see what else we could be doing. And it starts with me as well. I want to make sure I'm looking out for my own self-care, because I think it starts at the top.
Our number here is 713-440-8870. You can call or text us your comments right now for the sheriff. We got a text in here. It says, for Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, the community thanks you for all your hard work and for keeping our community safe. Also, thank you for fighting to get higher pay for the deputies that keep us safe. Remember, when you text us, put your name there or a handle so we can refer to you by that.
So I have a question, and this may be a simple no, but is your department at all called upon by ICE to help with identifying or arresting undocumented people?
I want to just thank that person that's in that message. I know we don't have the name, but thank you so much for that kind message. We've always collaborated with ICE. We've always had a jail-based system where we've worked in tandem with them. Obviously, they have a role that historically they've met to try to determine who may be a threat, and so that's been something that we've maintained over the years. So there's never been any disruption in that. So the collaboration has always been solid between ICE and us on a jail-based program, and then. Obviously, we understand that the issue around immigration nationally and policy shifts and changes obviously are an ongoing thing. And so we're in communication with them, and we have regular talks with them. It hasn't been something where they've called on us specifically because I think we're such a rich environment here of some resources. It's a large metroplex, if you will, with regionally. And so our work has primarily been with them based on the jail-based program. It's what we've been asked to continue to do, and that's what we've been doing. And obviously, they also have street-level enforcement that they're kind of tasked with, and if called upon, then we're there to support as needed. But I think they've been able to move forward with their own mission, and there's been just cooperation as needed.
The number here, 713-440-8870. We have a call from Janine from West Houston. What's on your mind today?
Yes, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. My question has to do with the security constable program that subdivisions can participate in to engage the constables to patrol their subdivision as a group. I believe our subdivision pays about $120,000 a year for this service of, I don't know how many hours it is per day or per week, but we get good assistance by the constables. They're very quick to come when we need them. I'm just curious, how does that money factor into the overall budget and to the, I understand, the $57,000 a year as a salary? And the second question has to do with the flock cameras. A lot of subdivisions are putting in flock cameras around, and I wanted to know, how is that being utilized by the constables, and is it integrated enough so that, if something happens in a subdivision, the constables, can see it and respond?
Thank you for your call, Sheriff.
Thank you, Janine, for calling in. Yeah, the constables, the deputy, the contract system is one that's somewhat unique to our region, and many communities do take advantage of it, and that's great that she's very happy with the service. And so many of them, depending on how it's set up, do cover either the full percentage of what it costs to basically that deputy or deputies or deputy constables are assigned directly to that community and stay within that community. Sometimes there's a split of costs, so they spend some percentage of time there, and then the others could be utilized in the broader community for other enforcement efforts, if as needed. So that's the way it kind of works. So basically, if they want to cover the cost and have them assigned to the area, that's a decision that community makes, and it's kind of a fee for service kind of model. In terms of flock cameras, just in general, overall, I'm a big believer in technology being a force multiplier. We definitely have seen the benefits of the cameras in public spaces, and we leverage that, as I'm sure the constables and others do as well. So, obviously technology is a key part of our society now, and it's something that we have to continue to evolve and incorporate into our operations. Again, no budget, no matter what, is ever going to be able to cover everything. And there's a lot of emerging crimes that utilize technology. And so it's something that we utilize, and we see it as a good tool, and all agencies do participate in using that technology.
As I understand it, you've talked a lot about the underinvestment in law enforcement in the 80s. And I'm wondering the parallels you can draw from that or the lessons learned from that we should be paying attention to today.
What happens, though, we've talked a little bit about the constraints sometimes of budgets, and I understand it's difficult. I've been on that side of it before during my time on city council, and it's very difficult. I remember having to shut down or was a part of a council that had to make tough decisions when it came to shutting down library hours, reducing swimming pool hours over the summer, potential layoffs and furloughs. All these things are very challenging. But if you start just having folks leave your workforce, then eventually you have to end up paying anyway to attract people to come back. And when you're talking about public safety, it's an essential service. It's one that I think anybody would say that's one of the key components of government is to provide safety for their community, similar to infrastructure, public works, solid waste, those type of efforts. So I think what you end up seeing, especially in the 80s, is you start seeing, morale starts going down. People start looking for other jobs and other markets, and it really impacts just the safety of the community, as I mentioned. So, and then we're basically just having to end up doing the same thing anyway, which is, well, let's increase to attract more people. There's some agencies, obviously different dynamics, but in other states that are giving double digits plus bonuses just to attract. You see billboards all over, even here from other agencies in the suburbs, where you see, come work for us. It's they're reaching for different folks. And I'll tell you that here we're very fortunate in our agencies. We have well-trained. We invest a lot in training our first-line personnel. It's a shame to train them up, and local taxpayers pay so much only for them to go and ultimately serve somewhere else, even if they left, assuming that they left the region.
Yeah. Now, it's your third term as sheriff. What are some of the lessons that you've learned and maybe some improvements since 2016?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I'm always I reflect on is that really public safety is a non-political thing, and at least it should be. I think it's something that, we want to make sure that people feel safe in their communities, that we're able to address any emerging crime threats that we may see out there. I think that it's important to understand the challenges of operating the largest jail system in the state of Texas when you're dealing with issues, so many that intersect our work. Again, we operate the largest mental health hospital in the state. And it's very complex, and how dependent we are on the other cogs in the system, because if something is slowing down in other parts, it impacts our work tremendously. Being able to stave off a pandemic inside our jail system was a huge lift. We were all trying to figure it out as we went. And that was an incredible experience. Overseeing, our efforts with Harvey was an incredible experience. So crisis management has been I'm battle tested.
All right.
That's right. Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, thank you so much for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you. Stay hydrated out there.
Sure will. I have my water right here.
Coming up in the next hour of Hello Houston, immigration attorney Ross Miller joins us to talk about the latest on immigration and more. This is News 88.7.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from John Moore, helping with plumbing, electrical, and air conditioning repairs, including out-of-warranty units since 1965. Details at 730-2525 or at johnmooreservices.com.
Support comes from Rice University's Baker Institute, where you can hear world leaders from presidents to prime ministers right here in Houston, with access to conversations on issues affecting the world. More at bakerinstitute.org/membership.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from the University of Houston Law Center, known for its faculty, international programs, and global engagement. More at law.uh.edu. Support comes from Signify Business Cash by Wells Fargo. With this business credit card, cardholders can earn rewards on business purchases with no caps or categories to track. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/signify. Terms apply. This weather update is brought to you by Paul D. Clote, attorney, mediator, arbitrator.
For the rest of today, it's going to be sunny and windy. We'll get up to around 91 this afternoon. And partly cloudy tonight, a low near 78. Looking ahead for tomorrow, some clouds and a high getting up to near 97. It's 85. This is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston, News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, we continue diving into the big stories of the day, such as a school discipline bill that increases both the severity of punishment which students could face for attacking their teachers and the amount of time schools can use in-school suspensions. I'm Frank Billingsley.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We'll also talk with Houston immigration attorney Ross Miller, who discusses the latest deportation numbers here in Houston and the Trump administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act.
And I'm Ernie Manous. Plus, we'll also hear from Kenneth Allen, Director of Houston Parks and Recreation Department, who walks us through some of our city's hidden treasures.
And we want to hear from you, so give us a call at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel. Just go to hellohouston.org and click the big orange banner.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump's engaging in phone-based diplomacy today in his quest to end the largest land war in Eastern Europe since World War II. This morning, Trump got on a call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin has so far resisted direct talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to halt Russia's full-scale operation against its neighbor. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says Trump is frustrated.
He has made it clear to both sides that he wants to see a peaceful resolution and a ceasefire as soon as possible. But as for specifics on a timeline, I won't get ahead of the president.
President Trump was also expected to speak with Zelensky. Pope Leo XIV has met with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. NPR's Ruth Sherlock reports the conversation comes ahead of U.S.-led diplomatic efforts to make progress on a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine.
Vance, a Catholic convert, was among the last political leaders to meet with Pope Francis before he passed away. Pope Francis and the Trump administration had starkly different views, particularly on the topic of migration. Pope Leo has already spoken out in support of migrants, and in a readout of the meeting with Vance, the Vatican described, quote, an exchange of views and calls for, quote, respect for humanitarian law and international law in areas of conflict and for a negotiated solution between the parties involved. The Vatican has offered to host peace talks to try to bring an end to the war in Ukraine. Ruth Sherlock, NPR News, Rome.
The National Weather Service confirmed an EF3 tornado cut across part of southern Kentucky Friday night, killing at least 19 people. In London, one of the hardest areas hit, neighbors are helping neighbors in the aftermath.
It took hours for Sherry Shepard to reach her home after the storms. She arrived to the sounds of people calling for help and first responders trying to reach them.
The pictures don't do it justice until you've seen it. They just kept removing people, our friends, our neighbors.
Street after street, homes were gone. Miraculously, Shepard's was barely touched. So she turned her garage into a staging area for supplies. It's filled with things like food, water, tarps, and cleaning supplies.
We feel blessed. We're almost kind of feel guilty. We're just trying to help as much as we can.
Volunteers from as far as California have been working out of Shepard's garage. For NPR News, I'm Karen Czar in London, Kentucky.
President Trump's domestic priorities now head to the full House for a vote, but its fate is still far from certain. The Republican leadership is attempting to secure full GOP backing for a measure the Democrats are already united against. Republican House leaders have pledged modifications to appease fiscal hawks who've been demanding deeper spending cuts, including to Medicaid, to pay for the bill's tax cuts. It's NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. Houston police are investigating after two officers fired at a man Saturday afternoon who reportedly pointed a weapon at them. HPD Assistant Chief Luis Menendez-Sierra says officers started looking for the suspect after he allegedly caused an accident on the North Freeway.
It appears he either cut them off or he kind of ran them off the road, probably because he did appear to be intoxicated. At that point, that caused the other two vehicles to strike each other. And then he continued to travel and left the scene while they waited for police to arrive.
Officers found the vehicle a short time later near the crash scene. Menendez-Sierra says two officers opened fire at the driver when he brandished a weapon while still sitting in his vehicle. Local officials are urging parents to keep an eye on their children at the pool as part of a water safety campaign this summer. From the Fort Bend County Bureau, News 88.7's Natalie Weber tells us more about their message.
The annual drowning rate in Fort Bend County is more than twice the national average. That's according to EMS Chief Dudley Waite. He says it's important for parents to keep an eye on their children because they're often not able to call for help when drowning.
In reality, drowning is very quick, and it's more times than not silent.
Local officials also said it's important to keep unsupervised children out of pools by securing the area with gates and locks. Among adults, drownings often involve substance use and are more likely to occur in lakes, rivers, and other open bodies of water. From the Fort Bend County Bureau, I'm Natalie Weber, News 88.7.
Major storms caused damage overnight west of Fort Worth. Several people were injured, according to authorities. Strong winds and an unconfirmed tornado were the likely cause of the damage to some buildings and structures. More hot weather on the way this week in Houston. High of 91, but we'll be back in the mid-90s later this week. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, working to help protect small businesses and the owners that run them, offering customizable coverages to salons, accounting firms, tradespeople, and more. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
And we are here with you in the noon hour, lunchtime hour. We took a quick break, ran down the hall, and ate a bunch of your crackers, Celeste. They were so good.
I didn't get a cracker.
They're my favorite. Oh, the Trader Joe's trail mix crackers. Absolutely delicious.
You know, it's funny. We haven't talked about this a lot lately, which is the fact that we are streaming live on YouTube, and we want you to join that. So go to YouTube, look for Houston Public Media, or just look for Hello Houston. The cool thing about it is not only do you get to see us and what we're doing, but there's a great chat that carries alongside of it. You can get into the conversation there. And something else I wanted to mention.
Yes.
Two things I still want to mention. One, we got a text earlier in the show about Eurovision. Somebody wrote, as long as Espresso Macchiato didn't win, I'm thrilled. I already can't get that earworm out of my head. That's the problem with Eurovision. It's filled with earworms, and it gets there. Esse diva, I cannot get out of my mind. So that was Spain's song. But the other thing I wanted to mention, which I just heard about, is we want to congratulate our digital department here at Houston Public Media. They just received news that they won an Edward R. Murrow Award for Houston Public Media for coverage of Hurricane Beryl in Greater Houston.
That's wonderful.
So congratulations to our digital team.
Congratulations. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
So
I was in between jobs during that one.
Yeah, but then you popped in. You helped us out a little bit with our coverage of it, too.
I didn't.
Didn't you run them?
You asked me to, but I was still under no compete.
Oh, yeah.
So you had to wait on me.
We did wait for you, but it was well worth the wait because right now you can tell us about this heat that's going on.
Well, I mean, almost consider it a heat emergency because there is a major heat out there and feels like numbers are going to get to 109. When they get to 108 consistently for most of the area, that's when they issue a heat warning. Mm-hmm. So, we're playing with numbers and splitting hairs, especially to be honest, when you're talking about Fahrenheit. I mean, the difference between 107 and 108, probably you don't realize,
Right.
So it's whenever it's over 100, you really got to be careful. So stay hydrated. That's the word from here.
Well, I have a hint for people, or a little, if you're really hot tonight, I hear over at Faith Lutheran Church in their gym, it's air conditioned.
Yeah, so what are you doing there tonight?
You should come over there because I'll be interviewing Adam Kinzinger, former congressman, and he's going to be there for the Meyerland area Democrats. And but he's taking questions. He's inviting all to come, and I'll be interviewing him. You can find out more at the Meyerland Area Democrats Facebook page. But if you just show up at Faith Lutheran Church in their gymnasium tonight over in Meyerland, you can just register when you get there. And we've done this a couple of other times, and he brings a very interesting perspective, and still considers himself a Republican.
I was just about to ask you that.
Yes.
I find that fascinating that he's speaking to Democrats and he still considers himself a Republican. And that the Democrats would want him to speak.
Well, I think he's of the mindset that he is where he always was. It's the parties that have changed around him. It's kind of like the Bushes used to always say, we've stayed who we were. It's the world's shifted around us. And he has worked very hard at trying to find his whole thing, Country First is his new program, trying to find that balance in today's world and how you can have conservative ideals or liberal ideals, but you can still follow law and precedent.
See, I would think that would be exactly why he would stay within the Republican Party and stay within politics, because he has gotten out of politics a bit, hasn't he, Ernie?
I think also he's been doing a gig with CNN as a commentator there, so I think that kind of removes you from running for, today's day and age, who knows anymore?
Yeah.
Any of those old rules don't apply. But we'll be talking with him about that and what he's seeing. And
good interview.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
I was going to prepare for it, and then I thought all I have to do is say, so what's going on in politics? And I can just sit back and he'll take it. But anyway, that's tonight. If any of you are out there and you're looking for something to do, come hear us.
All right, headlines.
Yes, and coming up this hour, we're going to be speaking with immigration attorney Ross Miller, who's going to talk to us about the Aliens Enemies Act and about the deportation that we've been seeing around in our
We had
city.
so many calls last week.
We had so many calls, and that is one of the reasons why Ross is here, because
I was off last week, and I heard the show, and it was
tell
on
everybody
fire.
our number so they can start getting queued in.
Yes, you can call in at 713-440-8870 and ask any immigration questions to our attorney, Ross Miller, who's going to be here joining us on Hello Houston. But moving along into our topics, a Texas Senate panel on Thursday advanced a school discipline bill that increases both the severity of punishment students could face for attacking their teachers and the amount of time schools can use in-school suspensions. House Bill 6 is the legislature's attempt to stem a reported rise of student violence in classrooms since the COVID-19 pandemic, which school leaders say is making working conditions unattainable for teachers at a time when they are dealing with high turnover rates. If the bill passes the Senate, the House will have to agree to the new changes, or lawmakers will have to iron out their differences behind closed doors before the legislation becomes law. In the House bill, when students attack teachers or make terroristic, and I put that in quotes, that was quoted, threats, the House version of the bill would require students to go to disciplinary alternative education programs, an alternative to suspensions or expulsions, for at least 30 days. What are your thoughts? Should students face tougher penalties for attacking teachers? Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
Well, and it also gives unlimited in-school suspension. So as long as it takes to make it. But I don't think it's enough. I think any teacher that's being attacked in any way by a student, another student being attacked in any way by another student, I think you just send them home.
This truly,
a lot of them are homeless, though.
Breaks my heart because to me, the word punishment, we see over and over studies that very strict and punishment doesn't work. And these students, you have to get to the root cause. What is going on? A lot of times there's issues outside, at home, whatever it might be, that is causing some real, for a young person to act out.
Well, we had those ambassadors in a lot of the schools that the superintendent shut down, and now it's gone to just
wraparound specialists,
the wraparound social workers.
And I think this is tough.
But Mike Miles, if I remember correctly, when he first got here, he was on another show I was doing, and we talked about this. And the idea of, as opposed to just suspending, getting the children out of the classroom, it was moving them into another place at school so they were still getting education, but they were out of causing problems in the initial classroom,
right,
which caused a lot of controversy at the time.
Within HISD, that's right.
But I'm wondering, in practice, and now that it's been going on, your thoughts on that. So it's having children in the school system.
The thought behind when Superintendent Mike Miles, I believe it was one of his first initiatives, was, and the headlines read, closing down libraries to open detention centers.
Right.
And what they were doing was they were finding space within libraries and making half of it basically that, where students would still be getting instruction.
It would be virtual?
But it'd be virtual.
Yep.
And they were sitting in more of like a cubicle. And, that is also tough because you have to have somebody in there with them. And if the kid's not paying attention in the classroom with an adult in it, or even perhaps attacking an adult or another student, having them sit there, how effective is that?
But
I just think that we have to have, there's more ways to
Right, but you do know there's that contingent of students who realize if they cause a commotion or suspended, they go home and they don't have to go to school. But by making them, no, you still have to be here and you still have to be exposed to the lessons.
I don't think
I just don't know if there's been any studies done to say how effective it's been.
I don't think we should be sending them home.
Right.
Because that's a problem in
and there have
itself.
been complaints from teachers that they cause a problem and they get suspended for 3 days and they come back like, so what? No big deal.
As a teacher, if you're listening right now, or an administrator, someone involved in the school system, or a parent who's been involved in this, give us a call, 713-440-8870. Your thoughts on this bill? I mean, on the surface, it sounds like a good idea. There's disruption in the school classrooms. We've got to do something about it. There has to be punishments for it. But is it attacking? Is it approaching it the right way or not?
Right. The approach is the question.
Is the approach right? What do you think? Call and let us know. 713-440-8870. You can also text us. Okay, let's move on to something that came up a little earlier and we've been chatting about here. Jeep Weekend 2025 is wrapping up with a total of 275 arrests, according to Galveston County Sheriff's Office. The total includes 278 misdemeanor charges and 52 felony charges, which actually goes higher than 275. I don't know the math here. Authorities have reported recovering 42 firearms during the event. The high number of arrests comes after authorities promised to enhance police presence on the Bolivar Peninsula for this year's Jeep Weekend. While the 275 arrests in 2025 are a decrease from 313 arrest record last year, they still exceed the number of the prior year of 243 arrests that were reported in 2023 and 183 in 2022. All of those, I think, are just like splitting hairs. A lot of arrests are happening. That's all you need to take away. What are your thoughts on Jeep Weekend? Does Galveston need to make an official event and monitor even more closely? 713-440-8870. I'm going to start with Frank on this one.
I mean, from what I've seen, they pretty much shut the beach down.
Yeah.
I mean, it killed the event, all of the police attention and all of these arrests, all of these firearms being taken out. It was a pretty serious crackdown.
Give me a little basics. Jeep Weekend is what exactly and who's doing what?
It used
What
to
do
be
you
called
know?
Topless Weekend. And the reason it was called Topless is you would take your top off your Jeep.
A little play on words.
Yeah, everybody
Ernie's
got
eyes
excited.
got real big. If you're watching us on YouTube,
Calm
you
down.
can see Ernie's eyes go.
And you could see Celeste dance when they said topless. She was wriggling in her chair. But
it's like pole dancer weekend, but different.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so that's why it was called Topless. But then that name was kind of whatever, and so it became Jeep Weekend. And so you unveil your Jeep and you
just folks all came
driving
together
around, and you can imagine it's bad enough when people are drinking and vaping and maybe doing gummies or whatever they're doing out there, and now they have an automobile on the beach.
But
that just leads to problems.
It was an unorganized official event. It was just word of mouth. We're all going down there for this correct?
Kind of like Capitol was for a long time.
Okay,
yeah.
so it's just kind of a gathering.
Yes, let's all go. It's like, you see that now a lot of groups, and they're not unruly groups, but they'll say, let's all go on a cruise.
Right.
And we're all going to, our group, like bridge players. Let's go on and we're going to play
So the idea being
if
if the city, if the county, if Bolivar Peninsula, whatever the township Township decided
Well,
to
and that's part of
organize
Galveston County.
it.
Galveston
Okay.
County goes all the way to High Island.
So if they decide to make it a sanctioned event, then they could put certain regulations in place. Is that kind of what we're saying?
Well, that's what I guess the hope would be if you're more controlled, because you're I guess a legal obligation to make sure that everybody's taken care of, but that's what they're trying to do anyway. There's must be a very good reason that they don't want to make it a sanctioned city event.
Yeah.
My guess is it doesn't bring in enough money to make
So
it
my
worth
other
it.
side of it was going to be, is it a big money maker for Bolivar? Doesn't have that many stores to start with.
Well, they don't, and they don't have
The
that many
big
restaurants.
store.
People bring their own coolers and their own food. A lot of Airbnbs have popped up for rental. Now, I don't know what happened this weekend. I guess that if you rented one and your Jeep Weekend was cratered, you still had to pay your bill. So, because it's not their fault that the police force came in and did this.
Well, if you played at Jeep Weekend or were arrested at Jeep Weekend, give us a call, 713-440-8870. But if you've only got one call, don't waste it on us.
What? I was going to say, definitely wasted on us.
I tell you, well, Jimmy Fulton did a good job. He said that's what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And then they said, no, you can't do that because, we have freedom of going to the beach.
Okay, I am old enough to remember during these times of the year, movie theaters would put up on their marquee
It's so exciting.
air conditioning.
Well, I know,
so people
right?
just go in for that. What happened at the box
I remember
office?
smoking in balcony only. I remember those signs. So I've been around a while. All right, so Final Destination Bloodlines drew big crowds to movie theaters this weekend and easily topped the domestic charts. $51 million in ticket sales. How about that?
Wow.
I know. According to studio estimates, that from Sunday, and the movie earned the same internationally. So that adds up to $102 million globally. Not bad for a weekend debut.
Yeah.
Disney's Thunderbolts landed in second with $16.5 million. That's a really low second, by the way, from
That's
51.
a big drop, yeah.
And then Sinners, I don't know anything about Sinners. That placed third with 15.
Oh, my gosh.
And we're letting you talk
Frank.
about variety and entertainment news? Ugh.
Sinners is like the movie.
Well, it was third, so not the movie.
It was for a bunch of weeks.
It is.
I mean, there's
huge.
no chicken zombies, whatever, in it, but
I
No.
know. I'm waiting for Mission Impossible.
That's gonna be
the final reckoning.
everyone's talking about compared to last year's summer box office, which was very light, and we've seen some better performers this year. The one thing you got to keep in mind in that discussion is that what you were seeing last summer was the output after the writers' strike and the actors' strike, and so therefore there was less content being produced, less of quality being put out there. So let's just keep that in mind as we look at now. We're getting the stuff that's back in the pipeline, so we're going to see these bigger tentpole movies.
I'm excited about Mission Impossible. I've watched every one, and of course, I watched the show in the '60s when it was original.
Okay, Grandpa.
Never seen it. Yeah, I mean, you lost me when you didn't know what Sinners was.
We were talking. If you have a thought on the box office, summer box office, give us a call, 713-440-8870. Someone who did have a thought, it's Bill from Baytown. His thought is on the discipline bill. Bill, what's on your mind? A lot of bills there.
Thank you very much for picking me up. I merely wanted to expand the conversation.
Please do.
A major driver on the push towards private schools has to do with the anxiety of parents for the safety and education of their children in an environment that can be downright frightening, and certainly frightening when you hear the story back home and you weren't even there. I don't know how the state is going to keep teachers, and I have a suspicion the private school push will grow bigger if the other 20 kids in the room, as well as the teacher, do not have a sense of protection.
Bill, quickly, are you an educator, a parent, or just an involved citizen?
I am an involved citizen. My wife, now 18 months gone, was an elementary school educator in Baytown. I have a son and a daughter-in-law who teach in the same school district. I'm a product of Texas schools, and I know that a lot of people are very, very anxious about the failure of the disciplinary systems that Texas has been using. I don't know that this bill is a solution, but nevertheless, the problem's real.
Bill, we're sorry for your loss, but we appreciate your call today and the commitment to public education your family seems to be sharing with us. Thank you for calling.
Coming up on Hello Houston, immigration attorney Ross Miller joins us to talk about the Aliens Enemy Act, to deport migrants and more. And we continue to take your calls on today's topics at 713-440-8870. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
When you hear a story on Houston Public Media, you know it's been carefully reviewed and put together by journalists who take the time to get it right.
Your support helps keep our reporting clear, balanced, and factual.
Because when you have all the facts, you can make better decisions for yourself, your family, and your future.
Protect the news that you rely on. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Hi, I'm Craig Cohen, the host of Houston Matters. Join me weekday mornings at 9 or at your leisure on your podcast feed for your daily guide to the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston. From politics to the economy, energy to the environment, healthcare to education to transportation and beyond. If it matters to Houston, it matters to us. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts or live on the air weekdays at 9 a.m. right here on News 88.7.
Support comes from Theater Under the Stars, presenting In the Heights, the first Broadway musical from Lin-Manuel Miranda, creator of Hamilton. Now on stage at the Hobby Center through June 1st only. Tickets at tuts.org. Support comes from Novotny & Company, offering commercial and residential property tax protests for 38 years. The deadline to file a protest is May 21st in Harris County. Info and online filing at novotnycompany.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Holocaust Museum Houston, featuring Ilan Ramon, A Life and Legacy, the story of the first Israeli astronaut. Exhibit opening and reception on May 29th. Details at hmh.org.
Support comes from Health Link Advisors, helping hospitals safeguard patient care and operations against cyber attacks with documented continuity solutions. Details at healthlinkadvisors.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
All right, if you were listening last Thursday, you know that we discussed the Trump administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport migrants in the Supreme Court's birthright hearing. We had a busy week.
It was busy.
Indeed. The phones just lit up like crazy. And, of course, we did our best. We don't have all the answers. We needed an expert to explain the nuances of all of these headlines. So we invited Ross Miller. He's a managing shareholder at Gonzalez Olivieri, LLC, immigration firm in Houston. He currently serves as treasurer for the State Bar of Texas Immigration and Nationality Section. And he has argued immigration cases before the 2nd, 5th, and 11th Circuits and has successfully represented clients before the United States Supreme Court. Ross, that's a pretty good resume. I'm glad you're here.
Well, thanks, Frank, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here to discuss some of these
what's
issues.
the biggest question you're getting right now?
So the biggest question that we're receiving right now is, how do we plan? What do we do to be ready in case there's some type of enforcement action that's taken against me, against my business? And I mean, the reality is it's a case-by-case situation. It's different for everybody. Everybody's situation is obviously different. But my recommendation, number one, is to try to not panic. Try to understand, this is still a nation of laws. We have due process. You have opportunities to apply for different forms of relief. But my recommendation isn't to wait until the very last moment, when you have an enforcement action being taken against you. There are different ways you can prepare, get your file from immigration, for instance. That can take a few months. So, if you walk into an attorney's office and you say, my spouse has already been detained, what can you do? Well, it's a bit of a struggle for the attorney to get all of the information about what's happened in the case. If there's a deportation order, that makes the case very different. So preparing, knowing your options beforehand instead of waiting until the last possible minute. That's really the best advice that I can give right now with all of the fast changes that are happening.
If you have questions for us, give us a call right now at 713-440-8870. Just do a little setup for us to understand. When we talk about the Alien Enemies Act, your understanding of it and how you see it being interpreted today and what you think is valid and isn't.
Sure. So this is a particularly obnoxious statute from 1798 when Adams was president. This is the War of 1812. So basically, this is where it comes from. The idea here is if you are a member of a country, a hostile foreign power to the United States, if you have declared war on the United States or there's a risk of invasion into the United States, the U.S. government can use the Alien Enemies Act to detain, but also to remove or deport somebody from the United States. And that bypasses typical safeguards in terms of procedural due process, the right to a hearing, the right to ask an immigration judge for relief from removal. When the Alien Enemies Act is applied, those protections don't apply. And probably the most famous instance of this happening was during World War II. Members of the United States who, were German or Japanese nationals basically had their rights trampled. They had no due process. They were detained, removed from the United States. And so while federal courts have historically granted the executive, the president, pretty broad powers when it comes to immigration and national security, in recent years, the courts have been more reluctant to give unfettered power in these regards. And that's kind of what we're seeing under President Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act. So courts in Texas, here in the Southern District, which is where Houston is, courts in California, Colorado, New York have all basically said there is no invasion to justify use of the Alien Enemies Act to detain and deport people of Venezuelan origins. But the administration has argued that the Tren de Aragua gang, which is centered in Venezuela, basically is making an invasion or an incursion into the United States, which renders the Alien Enemies Act applicable.
So that's where the whole case really holds, whether or not you can say this is an invasion and can support that idea from a hostile nation. If that isn't there, then you cannot use the Alien Immigration Act.
That's
Alien
correct.
Enemies Act.
Correct. There's no justification for the statute to kick into effect. And today,
so that's where the court cases are settling on proving that?
So that's part of it. The other part is, okay, if there is an incursion, if there is an invasion, what procedural due process is required under the Alien Enemies Act? So the Supreme Court, this case was recently in front of the justices. They didn't decide the merits of the case, but they said, there has to be some type of notice. You have to tell people that we are enforcing this act against you because we believe you are a member of the Tren de Aragua. And you have to give people who are subject to this act some type of opportunity to contest a finding that they are in fact
even if
subject.
It's the Alien Enemies Act, due process must be present.
Correct, and that's what the Supreme Court has recently decided. And so that kind of demonstrates a shift in thinking from, historical interpretation, which is there's simply unfettered access or unfettered privileges for the executive.
Now, Ross, I want to bring it back to Houston, right here in Houston, because we have a lot of people with different types of statuses. And I think that we've been talking in very broad strokes, either, they have papers or they don't have papers. And you said you're getting a lot of questions. And one of the questions that I have is, as an immigration attorney, people that may not have representation, what should they know? And when I can tell you from firsthand experience, I know one of our nanny who we absolutely love. She has a visa. She this morning came and she is freaked out, for lack of a better word.
Sure.
And she's worked for us for 3 years. She is one of the most outstanding people I know. She has a visa. It has expired. She has asked for her renewal. And what can I tell her to give her some relief? Because she is in a panic. And you said, don't panic.
Sure.
But that's very easy to say when you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, for sure. Easier said than done, and I completely understand that. Going to a lawyer is kind of like going to the doctors. Nobody wants to do it, but you have to if you're unwell or you have some type of issue or situation that needs to be addressed. So what I would say is before, someone like your nanny or somebody in a similar situation, before they panic, what they need to do is consider their options. find out exactly where their case is. Oftentimes, if you are changing from one form of status to another, your status can be extended, right? Oftentimes, you can apply for a new form of relief. So many people who came in, for instance, under the paroles that the president has since reversed, people who had TPS, temporary protected status, or continue to have temporary protected status. Depending on the certain facts of their case, they may be eligible to apply for lawful permanent residence or some alternative form of status that can extend their period of authorized stay, employment eligibility. But it's important to not wait till the last possible second to do that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Is I would imagine these timelines, it takes a while to get your paperwork together, to seek a lawyer. So what can people do in the meantime as they're waiting here? And can they just get picked up by ICE and sent home? I know we were talking about the due process.
But before you answer all those, to go back to Celeste's earlier question, though, the person we're talking about.
Yes, I paid taxes. I'm putting this out there, but the other people have employees that help them.
Do you move for an extension or a renewal before your visa expires, or do you have to wait till it expires to then request? Could people be planning ahead?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. You do not have to wait, right? You can try to basically move to a different form of status if eligible for it. You can try to apply for an entirely new form of status, like lawful permanent residency. It's important, though, that you know the facts of your case and that you speak with a practitioner who is well-versed in immigration law. Many of our clients at the firm are from Central America, Mexico. In many of those countries, a notary is considered a legal professional. In the United States, a notario is not a legal professional.
A notary, yeah.
It's exactly right. And you have to be very careful about taking legal advice from somebody who has absolutely no legal training and, frankly, is operating a practice of law without legal authorization. You don't want to make these types of mistakes. We get clients who come in all the time and get very bad advice. Don't reapply for this particular benefit. You don't need to worry about that. Don't file this form. Well, those seemingly small mistakes in the immigration context carry very significant weight. The other thing is, you asked about, can somebody be picked up? Well, it depends on the facts of each individual case. So sometimes you'll have somebody who's lived in the United States for 20 years. They have no criminal record. They actually pay taxes, but they have a deportation order. They missed a hearing many, many years ago. And that person with an active final deportation order can be picked up and they can be removed. And there's very limited options for people to be able to help someone in that situation. But you could file a motion to eliminate the deportation order, to get it reopened. Due process, again, is still a thing. If you didn't get adequate notice of your hearing before you were ordered removed, that's a basis to reopen and rescind a deportation order. But you have to get those records. You can do that through a Freedom of Information Act request on behalf of the client, but that can take a few months to get those records. So it's something where you don't want to wait to be in a position and say, my spouse was picked up yesterday. What can you do for me now? It's something where you should definitely move to plan in advance.
Well, aren't people a little afraid to put their head above the water?
Yeah, that's a great
because
I
start to do all of this, and now they're going to know where I am and who I am.
And I'm giving you my information.
They're just going to come pick me up
you where
and send
I
me
work.
up. Right.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that? Or just go to a lawyer and let him do it?
That's a very, very important question. There are certain ways that you can request records, obviously, without sending a client's address to immigration authorities. However, oftentimes when you file a motion to reopen, you do need to provide the non-citizen's address to the government, right? So there are certainly situations where there is no other alternative but for providing that type of information to the government to comply with legal requirements. And that's why you need to speak with an attorney to be able to assess the risks, the possibilities for relief, rather than going to somebody like a notario who is going to give bad advice and skip over all of those details.
We are speaking with immigration lawyer Ross Miller. We are taking your calls, questions, and comments at 713-440-8870. As you talk about this, what I keep hearing is talk to a lawyer, talk to a lawyer. I believe a huge number of folks that are finding themselves in this situation probably don't have the resources to go for a lawyer. What advice do you have for them?
Yes, that's a great point. it's very unfortunate because in these instances, if I, would consult with a client who couldn't afford our legal services, we are a private firm. In those instances, I would say, there's an organization called Catholic Charities. You don't have to be Catholic to go. They can help people pro bono or low bono assistance. However, under this administration, many of the grants and funds for nonprofit immigration services have been drastically reduced. There is a bill pending before the Texas Senate, I believe, that's trying to eliminate any type of municipality or public funds from going into these types of services. So they're, Catholic Charities, groups like that still operate, but they are operating with a much more limited budget. And so, unfortunately, in the immigration system, one of the big misconceptions is that you have a right to a lawyer and that the government will provide that lawyer for you, but that's not the case. You have the right to seek out legal services, but there is no right that the government is going to provide those for you. Even a child as young as 4 years old is not entitled to an immigration attorney in immigration proceedings.
When we talk about undocumented people, we kind of have this in our mind that somehow they swam across the river, jumped the wall, somehow got away with it, and now they're just trying to make a life for themselves in America with no documentation. How else would they have done it?
Well, I think the other point to that is that they're not trying to make a life for themselves. I think the point is that people feel like they're taking advantage of hospitals, of our systems, and of our things.
Oh, sometimes. I guess that accusation is there.
That is, I think, the big accusation.
I guess what is the reality of the undocumented in this country currently? Who are they, basically?
And where did they come from?
So the vast majority of people who are undocumented in the United States, there are estimates that there are 12 million undocumented people. Most of them are of Mexican descent. And many of those people have been in the United States for 15, 20 years, even longer. Many of them have children who are citizens. You mentioned there's this widespread misconception about people using public resources. I have clients who are undocumented who come in and, they ask about public benefits for their children. And I explain to them, your children are citizens. They are entitled to this benefit. Take them to the hospital. You don't have to worry about that. And they're still apprehensive about it. They're still afraid, even though their children, again, are citizens and they're entitled to use those types of benefits. And Frank, to your question, many people who come to the United States come legally. They come on a visa. They come with some other type of permission. We have many Venezuelan, Cuban nationals who recently came in on a parole that the administration revoked the parole for. So not only is the administration targeting more undocumented people who are already in the country, but they're also putting more people into the undocumented category by revoking paroles and not giving them the opportunity to seek some type of lawful status.
And revoking visas.
Correct.
I mean, student visas have been revoked, and I guess HB1 visas have been revoked.
That's right.
And then, for some reason, Afrikaners all come in.
It definitely doesn't match the talk that the president has made about refugees, right?
Right.
And again, cutting resources for refugees who are trying to relocate to the United States, people who are victims of harm and persecution. This comes after, World War II, when the United States saw the liberation of concentration camps, and they said, wow, we recognize this was happening, our government knew this was happening, and we didn't do enough to protect people who were fleeing harm and persecution. That's where those laws come from today, and I mean, they're really under assault.
So much to talk about on this topic, but I don't want to run out of time and not talk about birthright citizenship since you brought that up. That too now is under attack.
Absolutely. Yeah, so birthright citizenship, the Supreme Court recently had a hearing on the whole issue of birthright citizenship. This is something that, as I said, President Trump is moving to basically put more people into the undocumented category. Birthright citizenship, it's a guarantee since 1868, right? The 14th Amendment clearly states if you are born in the United States, you're subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and you are a citizen. Either you're born or you're a naturalized citizen. I'm a citizen of the United States simply because I was born here. But President Trump is saying, well, if your parents are undocumented or if they came on a visa, then you would not be a citizen under his executive order. And the whole idea here is this notion that, I hate the term, but anchor babies. People come to the United States for the deliberate idea or reason to have a U.S. citizen child. It's Willy Wonka's golden ticket. They're going to petition for me. I get status. That's not the way it works, though. That's a total misconception. If somebody comes to the United States illegally without permission, that person needs a waiver for unlawful presence. Only a parent or a spouse with status can do that waiver. So your child who becomes a citizen, they turn 21, they can petition for you. It doesn't mean anything. You can't use that petition to get any type of status.
Just help me with one thing that I may be wrong on. The Supreme Court hearing that was happening was not necessarily about birthright citizenship. It was about if a single judge blocks a presidential order, that somehow they have more power than the executive branch by being a single voice can block it. That's actually what the hearing was about, not the issues of birthright citizenship. Am I right on that?
You are exactly right. And I mean, it's open to interpretation. My belief here is that the Department of Justice under the administration basically didn't even brief the merits of the birthright citizenship issue, because every court that has heard this issue has said the executive order is blatantly unconstitutional. So instead, what the administration is saying is, and this is something that President Trump, but also other administrations have complained about quite frequently, Democratic and Republican, they're saying it's not right for a single district court, federal judge, to impose a universal injunction, an injunction that basically blocks a federal policy nationwide. That's the big issue, but realistically, when you have judges, I mean, you look at the Alien Enemies Act situation, you have multiple judges saying different things, although most judges have said, Alien Enemies Act, you can't deport people under this act. In the Southern District here in Texas, that's what we have. But in the Western District of Texas, Judge Haynes, who's a Trump appointee, said you can deport people under the Alien Enemies Act. However, you have to have certain safeguards, 21-day notice and an opportunity for the non-citizen to basically contest whether or not they're actually deportable under that act. And so you have this patchwork of different judicial decisions that are bubbling up until you reach the Supreme Court, which is the final arbiter of the law in the United States. And that's kind of what the issue is whether or not you would allow a universal injunction to be in place so that people aren't harmed during the pendency of litigation. And so there is one policy of immigration throughout the entire country during that time.
Wow. Ross Miller is a managing shareholder at Gonzalez Olivari, LLC immigration firm in Houston. Ross, thanks for joining us today.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Coming up on Hello Houston, a look at cool hidden parks within the Houston park system. Stay with us.
I'm Natalie Weber with Houston Public Media's Fort Bend County Bureau. There's a lot to cover in Fort Bend County because we have both rural areas and more suburban communities like Sugar Land and Missouri City. And we're also seeing the growth impact all different parts of the county, whether that's new schools opening in Katy or debates about whether to bring back a property tax in Stafford. And I think that makes it a really interesting place to cover.
Support comes from GiveMeTheVIN.com. Purchasing vehicles in minutes with the VIN or license plate, or by bringing the vehicle to Houston area offices. Details at GiveMeTheVIN.com.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, over 50 years before the smartphone, the Polaroid camera allowed everyone to instantly chronicle their lives. Meet Mr. Polaroid on American Experience, tonight at 8 on TV8, or stream on the PBS app.
Support comes from Asia Society Texas, announcing 31 ways to celebrate Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, featuring Vicki Wynn, sharing her journey from boat baby to NBC News. More at asiasociety.org/Texas.
Support comes from Rice University's Baker Institute, offering a forum for informed, nonpartisan, civic-minded engagement on the most pressing issues facing Texas, the U.S., and the world. More information about becoming a member is at bakerinstitute.org/membership.
Support comes from Carr, Riggs & Ingram, CPAs and Advisors, a top 25 nationally ranked full-service accounting and advisory firm offering tax, audit, accounting, consulting, and advisory services. Learn more at CRICPA.com. Support comes from John Moore, helping with plumbing, electrical, and air conditioning repairs, including out-of-warranty units since 1965. Details at 730-2525. or at johnmooreservices.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Houston Parks and Recreation Department oversees 382 parks, encompassing over 25,000 acres across the Houston area. With so many parks to see and explore in Houston, naturally, no pun intended, it can be easy to overlook some hidden gems in the city's park system. With us now to tell us more about Houston's hidden parks is Kenneth Allen, the director of the Houston Parks and Recreation Department. Kenneth, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time.
Now,
That's a lot of parks.
I was going to say, and you know what? I mean, it's getting hot outside, Kenneth. You know, are these hidden gems shaded? Where should people be?
But first, are they air conditioned? Are your parks air conditioned?
No, but talk to us about where they are.
Well, I like to consider every park really a hidden gem. When you think about the type of parks we have and where they're located, 383 parks, some of them regional parks, some of them community parks, pocket parks, and neighborhood parks all over this city. And everybody know about our signature parks, Memorial Park, Discovery Green, Herman Park. You think about those as really parks with a lot of different variety. But the hidden gems are actually right smack in the middle of neighborhoods that you would not know the parks are there unless you go into the neighborhoods. So
what really defines a park? How do you define that?
Just green space.
Just green space.
Yes.
Okay.
So if there's too much green space, you become controller of it.
That's right. I mean, we have, interesting enough, some of our parks, our pocket parks, are less than 1 acre, but they're valued by communities because they're surrounded by residential areas and people need spaces to recreate and just relax. You think about getting out of your home into a green space. It could be a bench. It could be a pavilion there. They're valued green spaces where people can just relax.
Who comes up with the park? I mean, is it the HOA has to come up with the money, or does the
city?
city go in and say, hey, there's a lot for sale, let's make it a park? How does that happen?
Well, our parks traditionally, they're public spaces. So the AOAs and some of the other private groups, that's a separate system, but we'll take it as part of the Houston's park system. But all the public parks are really land that's been created, that's been donated, that's been bought with partners. We look at the entire landscape of the city, and things change from year to year, decade to decade. Our goal is to have a park within a 10-minute walk.
Yeah, otherwise people won't use it. I mean, it's got to be close. No, that's the rule about gyms. If your gym isn't within a 10-minute drive, you're not going to go.
That's right. Okay, my big concern about parks, sorry, Celeste, urban wildlife. I am petrified of so many things that are out there. A rule for people when you're in a park, it's their park too, that wildlife, and how to treat respectfully.
Absolutely. We have the ecosystem and the animals that actually live in our parks. We have two major, actually quite a few to be honest. Lake Houston Wilderness Park is an example of a wilderness that we have. It's a 5,000-acre park with a lot of different outdoor amenities. You have all type of animals that live in the park with campers and with visitors. So there are certain things we do internally to ensure public safety and the safety of the animals in the ecosystem. We have a naturalist division, and our park naturalists and our forester take care of all the open spaces.
Well, to Ernie's point, are dogs allowed in all parks?
Yes.
They are, huh?
Dogs are allowed, but we request citizens to put them on a leash.
And what about picking up after them, too?
Yes.
Request that also.
I request that in my front yard.
Now, Kenneth, I want to zoom out a little bit. And how does Houston compare to other major metropolitan areas when it comes to green space? How are we doing?
That's a great question. If you look across the city, there's 100 cities, most populated cities that Houston has been compared to. From the Trust of Public Land, they're releasing a report pretty soon on park equity, on park investment, on acreage. We stand about average right now, but work with partners are certainly improving that. You think about all the Buffalo Bayou and all the linear parks, all the good work from the Buffalo Bayou Partnership and the Houston Parks Board. We have about 190 miles of trails connected now. but those are also parks. So that's enhanced our inventory. And so we're always looking at ways to make sure there's plenty of green space.
Are the arboretums around town, are those considered parks?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Any green area. Right?
Well, I mean, is it under your authority? It's really my question. Like the Houston Arboretum,
technically,
or Mercer Arboretum.
We own the land, but
okay.
It's operated and maintained by other organizations like the Arboretum, the Botanic Garden off of Buffalo Bayou. I'm sorry. It's actually southeast Houston. Yeah. Off of 45. I don't know if you guys have been there, but that's a great green space. Yeah. And then we have the Arboretum at Memorial Park. And then we have some other nature areas, 26 nature areas that we're protecting under a nature preserve ordinance. So nice. All over the place.
All right. My little story is going to build to a bigger question, but I live right near the Bethel Church Park. Yes. And lovely place to go. But what I've noticed over the last few years, gates went up and it's locked most of the time. Which brings me to the security and how you keep these parks rich and looking well without vandalism and homelessness or folks loitering in these parks. The challenges that you folks face there, and how do you balance between access to the community but keeping the parks clean and safe?
That's a great question. Bethel is nestled into a nice tight space. People were using that park as a dog park and not picking up their litter. So we petition it off, and it's used by permit, and it's open at certain times.
How do we find out those schedules, not just for Bethel, but for any of the parks? My mom and her caregivers used to like to take her over there and sit there, but then all the gates are up and they can't quite do that anymore.
Yeah, you can permit the park or look at schedules at our website, HoustonParks.org, and it will tell you just every park within this city. And our rules and regulations and who to contact if you want information on it.
What do you mean by permitting the park too?
You could permit Bethel. There's a lot of weddings there.
So you can ask to use the park at a certain time. Okay.
Now, Kenneth, you mentioned some of the more known parks like Memorial Park or Discovery Green. What are some of the hidden gems that you think people should know about?
And don't say they're all hidden gems. We heard that already.
All right. One great park that people may not know a lot about because it's north near New Caney is Lake Houston Wilderness Park. I mentioned it earlier. It's a 5,000-acre park. There's a lot of trail systems, hiking. There's cycling and biking. It's the only park in this city where there's overnight camping opportunities. So whether you want a lodge, a tent, or a TP, we have those opportunities. Also, it has the capability of handling RVs and in areas that's designated along the park. We have a nature center there where you can learn what type of animals dwell in the park as well. An archery range, fishing area. It's just it's a jewel that not a lot of people really know about, but it's there and it's vibrant.
Do you get a lot of action at the Buffalo Bayou cisterns, the underground cistern park?
Buffalo Bayou, you mean downtown in White Oak?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That park between.
And with summer coming up, what are some places and programs for families that you think people should know about?
Our number one, I think, summer opportunity is swimming. We have 38 pools. 37 because Tidwell Pool is down for renovation, but we'll have 31 operating pools throughout for this summer, and it's fast approaching. On May 25th, we're going to open all 37, and it's the first time in 4 years that we're able to open that many pools because of COVID, because of a lifeguard shortage. But that's number one, I think.
So
the
swim in the
opportunities.
pools, not in the bayou.
Yes, not in the bayou.
Then you'll encounter that wildlife you don't want to encounter, too.
But with aquatics, you have Learn to Swim, free opportunity for youth and adults. You have our water fitness program that's happening, our Learn to Swim program that's happening in various sites, and that the schedule is also on our website.
Give the website again?
Yeah.
It's HoustonParks.org.
And you're saying that these swimming lessons are free?
Yes.
That is huge.
That is
because
huge.
Every parent knows that camps and lessons are very expensive. So, yeah.
Yes. Number two opportunity, I mean, we have several. I know I'll be on the show all day if I told you everything, but the two most important are, we serve kids, of course, during the summer, is our summer enrichment program. We'll be operating that at 39 sites this summer, where kids can check in at 8 o'clock and the parents can pick them up at 6. And we operate by standards of care.
One,
yeah.
Sounds like my
Can you do that for the elderly too? I have a mom that I'd like
Great.
to drop off.
Kenneth, one last time, where can people find out this information?
At HoustonParks.org.
Kenneth Allen is the director of the Houston Parks and Recreation Department. Kenneth, thank you so much for joining us today on Hello Houston.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of our show. We want to thank you for listening, watching, commenting to Hello Houston. We will be back tomorrow with more conversations. This is News 88.7.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Certa Pro Painters, offering residential and commercial painting services, from color consultations to full project management. Estimates and more at CertaPro.com.
This afternoon we'll have sunny and windy conditions, with a high getting up to near 91. This is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston.
Funding for Here and Now comes from MathWorks, creator of MATLAB.